Hey YouTube, welcome back. Did you know Anchor was originally an islander, or Marshall was the only smug squirrel in the entire game? Well good, because that means like me you love Animal Crossing, including all these subtle details the franchise has to offer. But today I'm actually going to share some obscure Animal Crossing facts you don't know. I'm Mori and this is the start of a brand new series where we explore obscure Animal Crossing details, lost character lore, backstories and general facts you don't know. The aim is to entertain and share secrets, but hopefully even the die-hard Animal Crossing fans who know Anchor's past will discover something new. So let's dive in. Now Gracie is a fashion designer giraffe who makes it known they're all about that expensive upper class lifestyle and generally believes everything is beneath them. Gracie is all about making impressions, wearing the latest fashion and doesn't think twice about bragging to villagers about how famous they are. At least compared to them. I know what you're thinking, who is this Gracie? Gracie debuted in the original Animal Crossing and typically visits your town to award players with exclusive and rare clothing. Of course they don't really care, they just want to look good. In fact Gracie is almost so self-centered they purposely park illegally in the original Animal Crossing on days that Copper and Booker are holding a Bust Illegal Parkers campaign, just because. Anyway, like Tom Nook, Gracie has managed to work their way up the career ladder, making their mark within the fashion industry and somehow becoming a beloved character, at least until New Horizons, but we won't go there. Now Gracie's random fashion checks that would earn players an insult followed by a piece of rare clothing soon evolved into the most expensive brand in the game after revealing the Gracie Grace store. And as recent as New Leaf, Gracie's store still sells furniture items for several 100,000 bells each. Seems legit, right? Well, strangely, there are a few details hidden across the Animal Crossing series that suggest Gracie's not who they say they are. Back in Animal Crossing New Leaf, an item known as the Gossip Stone states Gracie isn't even their real name. And looking back even further, on very rare occasions, Gracie would deny their real name was Gretchen Grunch. Of course, we'll never know for sure, but it's looking like a classic case of fake it till you make it. Maybe Tom Nook found out and that's why they never returned. Now villagers in Animal Crossing are of course what we fall in love with and without a doubt one of the main reasons we pick up the game every day. They're typically residents just like us, the characters we spend the most time talking with and the ones we develop long-lasting relationships with. In many ways they're family. The reality is very different though. The characters you meet in the game have moved in from some faraway land just like you, don't know anyone else on the island and aren't related to anyone. Well, with the exception of 4 villagers that is. Francine and Chrissy, 2 adorable rabbits, are in fact sisters, with Francine being the oldest and the first villager siblings to debut in Animal Crossing. They remained the only villager related to each other for years until the New Leaf update released. In the Welcome Amiibo update, Cece and Vici, the Splatoon themed villagers, were introduced and like their Callie and Marie counterparts were confirmed to be related and in this instance siblings just like Francine and Chrissy. Of course this is pretty common knowledge, but something you probably don't know is pretty much every single villager in the Animal Crossing franchise has siblings. We just don't know who they are. Anchor has 10 siblings, Peanut is a triplet, Gonzo is the eldest of 3, and Francine and Chrissy have 2 other sisters born in between them. It's actually pretty insane. Unfortunately, other than the 4 we've already mentioned, we can't meet any of the other siblings. Let's just hope we see some new siblings join the franchise in the future. Now, if the last 2 years have taught us anything about the world of Animal Crossing, it's that it's a hugely successful franchise, given it's the second best selling Nintendo Switch game of all time. The game has seen a steady position in the charts since launch and seen regular updates even continuing after the huge 2.0 update that almost doubled the amount of content in the game. We've seen several new features like the Roost Cafe and Captain's Boat Tours being added after demand from the community, an expansion pack which is basically a spin-off, and several bug fixes to the game. In fact, the last patch update we received was only back in February. However, despite all of these regular updates, the campsite feature in Animal Crossing New Horizons still has a pretty serious glitch that remains unpatched. If you persuade a campsite villager to move into your island and replace a villager who is already moving out, rather than moving in, the campsite villager will instead join your move-in queue, and a random villager will autofill the spot instead. So although the campsite villager you invited would naturally autofill eventually, the mechanic is broken. But that's not even the worst part. If the campsite villager you invited was invited using an amiibo card, you can no longer summon the villager using amiibo, no longer find them in your campsite, or encounter them on mystery islands as they are stuck in the void. There is a way around this though. You simply have to cycle through 4 autofills, but that's a lot of work and probably why you invited a campsite villager in the first place. Currently it remains to be seen whether this issue will be addressed or fixed in the future. Now, we as Animal Crossing fans pump hours into the game, and I mean it's pretty common for players to accumulate over 1,000 hours of gameplay decorating their islands and attending birthday parties. However, it's not uncommon for Animal Crossing players to eventually want to start afresh. This typically means deleting their saves and starting over, or buying a second copy of the game and starting a second town. Of course, it's a little more difficult these days because you need a second Switch, but you get the idea. Now, starting over always seems like a good idea until you realise the grind for bells at the start of the game. Fortunately, there was a secret feature added to Animal Crossing New Leaf for those wanting to start a new journey. Should you decide to recreate your town from the ground up through the settings of the game, Tom Nook would pop up and offer to sell the town and everything and everyone in it. So instead of losing your hard work and all the progression you made, you can convert this into bells, which will be transferred into your bank and can be used to start a brand new journey with. And we're talking millions here. Tom Nook gives the option of buying the town, your entire catalogue, and even transferring any savings over to a new account. What a helpful Tanuki! This feature means you can experience a fresh start but not have to worry about bells for a long time. He also includes an option for receiving the bells in installments each day, in case you're worried you'll blow it all on turnips in one go. Pretty cool. Now, Animal Crossing, whether you're playing the original or the most recent, is all about progression, upgrading and unlocking features and working your way through the game until you have all the buildings and shops and can finally relax a little. Typically this starts out with spending money and upgrading Nook's Cranny, unlocking new shops, expanding the museum or its features, and accessing mechanics that will be more useful the further into the game you get. This stays true for all versions of Animal Crossing and remains fairly consistent. However, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, with regular updates that led up to the 2.0 update, as well as the smaller patches seen since, players who start their island journey today have quite a different experience to those who started closer to launch, making it the first Animal Crossing game to play differently in terms of progression depending on when you purchased the game. Prior to the 2.0 update in Animal Crossing New Horizons, there were 3 versions of the museum that could be upgraded to. We had the tent, the museum, and the renovated museum. Back at launch, Red didn't exist and could never be encountered until it was later added in version 1.2. Having already upgraded from tent to museum after catching a bunch of critters, this was how you upgraded to the final stage, making use of Red and his newly added artwork mechanic, giving you the 3rd museum and art gallery. However, the 2.0 update removed the smaller museum, leaving only the tent and the larger museum behind. This means if you started your island for the first time since version 2.0 release, you'll never actually be able to have this middle museum. Instead, players now donate to Blather's tent and upgrade directly to the final museum, completely bypassing the smaller one. This change does streamline the process of unlocking the art gallery and furthermore the roost when the time comes, but seems a little strange to alter the gameplay so significantly so far into launch. Now, with all the new information to digest, we should remember that sometimes it's these small details that are the most interesting. Did you know Anchor is allergic to apples? What's that about?